All right, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. It's really exciting to be with you today. It's been my pleasure to serve as your FDP director for the past year. Today marks my fourth FDP meeting in this role. Someone earlier asked me, what is it about FDP that made you want to become the FDP's executive director? So this is what I shared. I was a Polish immigrant growing up in a world of discrimination in inner city Detroit. My dad had a blue-collar job on the assembly line. My mom tells me my first words in kindergarten were tędy, tędy. That's the Polish word for follow me. Early on, I escaped into the world of fiction, reading every single book in the public library. Miss Fran, my fourth grade teacher, gave me my first scholastic book. It was a biography of Marie Curie, the Polish Nobel laureate. That began my love of science. FDP's mission of optimizing the impact of research and scientific discoveries gives me goosebumps. I'm here today to do everything I can to make sure we have a robust, high-performing organization to support FDP's mission. I want to protect and leverage the reputation and partnerships with the national academies, our federal partners, and all of you. Reflecting on my first year, three things stand out. One, FDP's mission is vital to our nation's preeminence in research. Two, FDP benefits from extraordinary partners, engagement, and leadership. Three, on an operational front, FDP is in very solid financial standing. So here's a few observations in these three areas. FDP mission. All parties in the FDP agree on the importance of minimizing administrative burden and maximizing the return on our research investments. FDP members, the research institutions, sign on and pay dues to work with us. Faculty members invest their time to identify and quantify the burden and find solutions. Our federal partners seek us out to help them maximize the impact of their research investments. I vividly remember my first day on the job, April 2nd, 2023. I can honestly say I haven't stopped running full tilt since that date. The criticality of our mission explains why this year has been both extremely busy and exciting. There are important activities and opportunities underway on all fronts. FDP partners, engagement, and leadership. Because we are all aligned on mission, we all care about moving forward and producing tangible results. Over the past year, FDP's federal engagement and collaborations have continued to grow in significant ways. Earlier this year, the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology reached out to me. PCAST was interested in learning more from FDP about administrative burden associated with grants. PCAST is the sole body of advisors from outside the government charged with making science, technology, and innovation policy recommendations to the White House. I worked with FDP co-chairs, Alex and Michelle, and an FDP working group to provide significant input and develop a comprehensive research document for the committee. In addition to the White House, the Department of Treasury, OSTP, the National Academies, and several federal agencies have reached out to me asking for FDP input and collaboration to advance the research enterprise and reduce administrative burden. I'm grateful and impressed with our amazing volunteers who are very passionate about FDP's mission and who give so much of their time to FDP. We couldn't do this without your help. We have had some turnover in our committee leadership, and we're very, very fortunate to have seasoned people volunteer to step into these roles. If you're new to FDP, we want you to be actively involved with us. I'm also very grateful to Michelle Bowles, who's sitting here at the table from NIH, who agreed to serve as the federal lead, replacing Debbie Raffi. Michelle continues to nurture these important federal partnerships. We have a meeting at noon today with all federal agency partners to discuss more opportunities for partnership. Finally, the leadership of your two elected co-chairs, Michelle Masucci and Alex Albina, have been beyond extraordinary. They've provided me and everyone in FDP tremendous support over the past year. We're very fortunate to have Tim Reuter, who replaced Kim Moreland's outstanding leadership in the financial area. Our strong financial standing will be a good source of investments we need in the future. Looking ahead, I want to ensure that we enhance and modernize our business operations to support the work that we're doing. We've begun discussions with our finance and executive committees to develop a plan to move forward in striving for excellence as a professional organization. Given our daunting mission, we must think critically about staffing, operations, and infrastructure. This is an important focus for me over the next year or so. Thank you to everyone who has welcomed me and worked alongside me this past year. I'll now turn it over to Michelle Masucci and then to Alex to say a few words before we start the federal session. Thank you.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me if I use this microphone? Wonderful. I hope everyone is doing great and that you had a great travel logistics getting here. I want to remind you, if you have not already downloaded the CVent app, you can follow everything going on in the program on the CVent app, and you can comment at the sessions asking questions, and then we'll moderate those from the podium. So just a little bit of housekeeping. But I did want to make sure to let you know that. It's really wonderful to see everybody in person again. I just feel it's the heart and soul of this organization that we meet together and work on our various activities and agenda when we're here in person. It's so important for us to do that even as we continue to meet virtually during the year. We really look forward now to our May event as the sort of, cornerstone of the organization. I want to give a special congratulations to Maria on completing her first year. I hope you'll help me in doing that. To say that Maria has hit the ground running is a complete understatement. As you know, she has been involved in rethinking every aspect of this organization. We hope for the better, but that is done with a great team around her, and of course with all of your support, and particularly the support of our committee and executive committee. So we really recognize everyone's contribution there. I'm going to leave it to Alex to do a more formal recognition for everybody, but I did want to do a call out to Barbara Gardner from Tufts University, who leads our program committee, because we wouldn't be here today enjoying each other's time and being able to engage in this terrific program without her work and the work of that entire committee.
Hey, Barbara.
So as you know, I'm the faculty co-chair, so it is incumbent upon me to recognize the amazing work of the faculty involved in the FDP. Their engagement in FDP has never been higher or more important. It's one of the features of this organization that faculty are available to work with all of the partners in the room and our federal partners in reducing administrative burden. But importantly, and I can't stress this enough, towards the goal of strengthening the quality, the talent pipeline, and the impact of the nation's research enterprise, one of the hallmarks of this great society. Faculty are engaged across all of the projects and demonstrations that we will be showcasing, and I want to thank faculty very specifically. So I hope you will indulge me, and I'm hoping my faculty will cooperate, but I would like to invite all of the faculty who are here today to stand so they can be recognized and be seen. So please don't leave me hanging, folks. Thank you so much. We also want to recognize the vital role that the National Academies plays in convening the Federal Demonstration Partnership and our long-standing work alongside of GWIR, the Government University Industry Research Roundtable, led by Michael Nestor, under the aegis of the Division of Policy and Global Affairs. We thank Tom Arison as well for his guidance in working with the academies. And for those of you who may not know, it is the 40th anniversary of GWIR coming up in June, and so there's a big meeting that is actually planned for that as well, and I hope all of you will be tracking those activities. And I think, as you may know, Michael Nestor has been extremely welcoming of FDP, so if you're a FDP member, so if you're interested in getting to know what's going on there, please seek him out. Michael, is Michael here in the room this morning? He will be here through the meeting, so make sure to seek him out. There are a number of faculty-specific meetings that I think are going to be of interest to all of you, but I do want to call your attention to a couple of them to make sure that they don't skip past your radar so that you can join us. In particular, today at the Faculty Forum, we will be welcoming Dr. Sarah Mason, who is the director for the Center for Research Evaluation at the University of Mississippi. She and her outstanding team led our evaluation, and though it's at the Faculty Forum, I invite everyone who would like to hear more about that evaluation to join us. We'll have a nice presentation and an opportunity to talk about some of the findings and how we can build on that work as we move forward. Faculty are also invited to dine together today. Anyone can join. There's no program, but we do actually have it set up so that you can have a special lunch together just to get to know each other. And then tomorrow there are 3 sessions to focus on. One is the FACT session, which is going to be defining and addressing burden. There's a faculty business meeting that's going to focus on the activities that we as faculty do across the FDP, and then a very special panel co-organized with GWIR, really led by Michael Nestor and sponsored, importantly sponsored by the academies. They paid for the travel and arrangements for everybody involved in that session to join. We'll be featuring Demetria Gallagher, who's the Vice President for Higher Education Ecosystems at VentureWell, Dick Coe, who is the Director of Chain Reaction Innovations at Argonne National Labs, Laura Stoy, CEO and founder of Revelia Chemical Company, Desmond Stubbs, Director of STEM Diversity Initiatives at Oak Ridge Associated Universities, and my colleague Gail Bassett, who's the Director of Economic Development and Strategic Engagement at Bowie State University. So it's going to be a great session, and it introduces 3 things that we haven't spent a lot of time focusing on at FDP. One is our relationship with national labs, which I know many of you do a lot of work contracting with national labs and are seeking ways to solve problems there. The second is that it focuses on commercialization, which is an area of administrative burden that we haven't really addressed at this organization, but which is a big part of what faculty deal with. And then finally, we're really pleased that we have such a large HBCU engagement in that particular session because, again, we introduced many new members to FDP at our last membership drive that were HBCU institutions, and we're really happy to see them engaged in this particular discussion about the special burdens that are faced in institutions that are either emerging research institutions, MSIs, PUIs, HBCUs, and so forth, as they try to organize their research activities and take advantage of many opportunities at federal funding agencies. Finally, today at the end of this plenary, we invite administrators from universities that do not have faculty reps, and you know who you are, and we're not judgy, but we do want to invite you to learn more about how you could recruit faculty members to be your representatives. So Eric Hom from the University of Mississippi has been very gracious to agree to sit at the membership, or I should say the registration table, and just answer any questions you might have. We have a few documents we can share with you as well. So thank you for indulging my comments. Again, it's great to see everyone, and I'm turning it over to Alex.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks, Maria. So first order of business is an apology for starting this at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I don't know what we were thinking. I've heard a lot from you, so we'll talk about it. But in any case, again, thanks to the program committee. Thanks, Barbara, for your leadership. This is a great meeting. We have a lot of good sessions. And as Maria alluded to, we've had some turnover in our executive committee. So I just wanted to take this time, rather than to recap what all the fun you're going to have today, but just to say thank you to some of our leaders that are stepping off, but for sure not stepping away from volunteering. As you know, we couldn't do this without all of our volunteers. Jean Herman Petrin, thank you so much for leading for the past 6 years or maybe more, barely, right? You're like 6 years, I'm done. But no, anyway, for University of Tennessee Health Sciences Center, headed up our membership committee, and through some of our toughest times, like through COVID, she managed to create more outreach, online onboarding for new members, and I think it really had an amazing impact just by judging the number of people that would enroll in our meetings throughout the whole time we were virtual. And then obviously now you can see the membership committee, led by Jean, has done an amazing job just to keep our members engaged. So I'd like to thank Jean. Thank you so much. And as I'm talking about the volunteers that are rolling off in the leadership capacity, I just want to point out that she will continue to help with our implementation of a new membership. It's called Membership 365, which will really kind of help to complete her vision of having an information system that allows volunteers and committees that are seeking volunteers to really match so that we can maximize our engagement with all of our participants. So we're looking forward for you to continue to work with us. And this goes for all of ours. Lynette Arias, I think she might be here. She was headed up our research administration committee for many years. Really transformative leader. She her and her committee led the formation of the Foreign Influence Working Group many years ago and still falls under the administrative umbrella of research administration. Worked with her faculty colleagues to create the faculty administrator collaboration team, which has had great sessions and does a lot of work on how to transfer our collaboration here to us while we're working within the universities. So she's really, I'd like to thank Lynette as well. Thank you. We also have Kim Moreland, who I think Maria already mentioned, has retired. Otherwise, she would have stayed with us, I'm certain. She is an icon. Kim is probably the first chair of the finance committee of FDP, and certainly was instrumental in helping the FDP many years ago creating the foundation on how we could best manage and have proper stewardship over the funds that come in from the academies. So she is retired, but I just wanted to make sure she's not here, but she deserves a huge shout out and a round of applause because her impact from the finance side. We are steady, we are strong, and it's thanks to him. And last but certainly not least is Stephanie Scott. She you've seen Stephanie very, anytime we can get her up on the podium, it's like a treat. She's just so outgoing and was a perfect chair of our communications committee. And she did a lot to push us forward through our current strategic plan, which was tell the story for FDP. And she was able to lead the development of a communications plan. She led the huge, massive overhaul of our website and continues to work daily on different activities regarding making sure that outreach and people have the information that they need. She certainly is not stepping down either. She actually is in the process of finalizing arrangements to create an NIH institutional training grants off-cycle webinar. I think it's going to be held July 31st. So you'll be seeing a lot of Stephanie. And so I think that's great. And before I thank our incoming, I just want to point out, we did hear briefly from our evaluators yesterday about some of the findings. And I do encourage you to go to the faculty session and hear, because it's pretty neat what Sarah has to say. But when we asked her, was there anything surprising or like really stood out, it was about, she was struck by the level of dedication and the level of volunteerism and the longevity of the volunteers, that people have been doing this for like decades. And so for all of you rolling off, I know this isn't the end unless, hopefully Kim will come back as a consultant. That's what everybody does right now. But I'm pretty assured that we'll continue to see our hardworking volunteers and hope that it inspires you all to think about stepping up and volunteering. And speaking of, I would like to thank the new committee chairs who have agreed to serve. Catherine Kissman from Texas A&M. Catherine, would you like to stand up so we can say thank you? Thank you, Catherine. It's a big job. She will be the membership chair. It's going to be some big shoes to fill, but we have confidence. We have Amanda Humphrey from Northeastern doing the research administration. Thank you, Amanda. She has a laptop on her lap, so she can't stand up, right? Tim Reuter, Maria mentioned, Tim is a longtime member of the Finance Committee and has agreed to step up and is already doing an amazing job. So thank you, Tim, wherever you are. And then Jamie Sprague from Cornell has agreed. She was hand in hand with Stephanie in getting our website up. So she has agreed to step up as the co-chair for communication. So thank you, Jamie. Review us. And that's about all I have to say. You know where to find me if you have any questions. I hope you enjoy this. Again, thank you to the program committee. Thank you to Maria and Sarah, because I know this, this seems nice and smooth, but what is the saying about like the duck where they just look like they're gliding, but they're paddling like crazy underneath the water, and that's what they're doing. So we should give them a round of applause as well. Thank you. Okay, so now I turn it over to Michelle Bowles. I feel so honored. Michelle.
See, this is the problem. When I saw 8 o'clock, I thought, oh no. They still think Debbie Raffi is the federal lead. Right? Oh my gosh, she would have been here, bells and whistles. I'm still trying to figure it out. But good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Maria and Alex and Michelle, for your comments. Thank you to the FDP for having confidence in my leadership. I do want to say, though, that while I might be the federal lead in title, I consider myself a partner and a colleague and a friend. And I look forward to working with all of our new federal partners that I plan to spur along and get them excited about, like I'm excited. I've been with the FDP for over 20 years and I just have had such a wonderful time working alongside of the membership institution colleagues. I've made some friends, some that I wanted, some that I didn't, Jim Luther. But I will say that we have gotten a lot done. And I'm just looking forward to sharing the experience that I've had with my federal colleagues and expanding upon the federal membership and expanding upon the demonstrations and reviving those so that we can really have a true way forward with administrative burden. So thank you so much, everyone, and I look forward to working with everyone. Thank you.
Okay, our first speaker is Jean Feldman. She needs no introduction, we know. Thank you, Jean. And of course, she's from the National Science Foundation.
Well, good morning, FDP. Gosh, this is my first in-person meeting since COVID, so I'm delighted to. Can you bring up my slides, please? There we go. Next slide, please. So I am from the National Science Foundation, and this is my 37th year with the FDP. So I've been around a while. I'm like a bad penny. I keep coming back. And I don't do this alone, so they get so mad at me when I do this. I am going to make Samantha Hunter and Jeremy Leffler stand up. Please, they are from the policy office. Folks, this last couple weeks with the PAP guide, I don't know if I'm allowed to say hell, but it's just been a form of hell. It's been tough, and I could not have done it without these two people, so thank them. Next slide. So we've got a PAP guide that just went into effect, and so there is not sufficient time to cover everything we've changed. It was a huge PAP guide change. And NSF expands the boundaries of science, so we don't follow rules well. So what I'm going to cover in this session and in the foreign influence, and then Sarah in the research security, we're not necessarily doing it in the sessions we're supposed to be doing because we've got a lot to talk about, so bear with us. And then I'm going to really end with NSF's implementation plan for the uniform guidance, as well as some outreach that's coming up. So next slide, please. So, PAP guide went into effect on Monday. Proposals submitted or due. This is the screenshot that shows you the changes. As I've mentioned, not even close to possible for me to cover. We've been doing a lot of outreach, common forms, our outreach head there, Jeremy Leffler, has done a great job putting together webinars. Between the NSF update and the ones we did on the common forums, 4,001, 4,900 and another, we're getting the word out through many different vehicles. But this is the slide. What I want to point out to you that is extremely important is that you faculty are creative. So you think if you submit the proposal before May 20, you don't have to follow the rules that are in the 24 PAP guide. Well, we know who you are. And you're getting lovely little messages from NSF that says you're going to have to come in and update your biographical sketch and current and pending other support. It's real. So listen to those emails, because we have to make sure when they go to panel, everyone is following the same set of guidance. Next slide, please. So one of the big changes that we've made is absolutely related to the mentoring plan. This came out of CHIPS and Science Act of 2022. Many of you go, mentoring plan's not new. You've had it in effect for many years for postdoctoral researchers. Well, CHIPS and Science modified America Competes to add graduate students. So if there's anything on line B1 or B3 of the NSF budget, you're going to be expected to have a mentoring plan that covers both postdoctoral researchers and graduate students. It's not two plans, it's one plan. It is still only 1 page long. So all we're asking is, if you want to, and this isn't even a requirement, you can separately address within that 1 page how you're going to mentor these two groups. But NSF doesn't have a requirement for that. It's still 1 page and has to cover both postdocs and grad students. The same as we've always implemented, if it's a separately submitted collaborative, the lead organization is going to submit a single mentoring plan for all organizations covered under that collaboration. The same with any lead that's got subawards. It's 1 plan because we consider it a collaborative single submission. So please do bear that in mind. Next slide, please. Another new requirement that was imposed by CHIPS and Science is the requirement for an individual development plan for both grad students and postdoctoral researchers. And what the requirement said was that grad students and postdocs who receive substantial support must have an individual development plan. It has to be updated annually, and it has to map to educational goals, career exploration, and professional development. CHIPS and Science did not define substantial support. The definition is any individual who's received a person month or more of support during that annual reporting period, and any of the PIs or co-PIs that are responsible for actually submitting that report are going to certify to the False Claims Act that there is a plan in place for any of the postdocs or grad students that were supported as part of that annual report. We have added a new term and condition that implements this requirement post-award to make very clear what NSF's expectations are. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to change gears a bit. This is what I meant by we may be covering things in a different order. We were asked to cover this in the foreign influence session, but there's just too many things to cover, and we only have 10 minutes in that session. So as many of you know, this isn't new to you, so I'm not going to go in detail. Michelle and I have co-chaired this group, and we finally finished the hurdle and cleared new common forms that harmonize the content requirements for both forms for use by federal research funding agencies. We literally addressed every single comment, both from the feds which there were over 500. I don't know how you can have 500 and it's only 6 pages of content. But there were 500 comments, and we addressed each and every one of them, as well as through the Federal Register process. And I think it improved the content of the forms. And we really, really did listen. Both forms include the requisite certification from NDAA 2021, Section 223, saying the information is accurate, current, and complete, as well as that you are not a party to a malign foreign talent recruitment program. This version of the PAP Guide 24-1 is NSF's implementation of those common forms, and I'm going to spend some time just briefly talking about that. Next slide, please. NSF, when you have a common form, one lucky, wonderful, I won't say stucky, agency gets to serve as steward. So you're responsible for putting it in the Federal Register, maintaining the forms, et cetera. And NSF has agreed to do that. And it's been really it's been an experience for us. We've been involved in the standardization process for a long time, but this one really generated a lot of interest. Samantha here is responsible for this page, and she even updated it further this week. And you see that we've got direct links on these forms to what the actual common form is for the biographical sketch and the common form for current and pending other support, as well as an updated definitions document. If you have not looked at that definitions document, please do, because it includes a lot of new definitions that you all requested that we add to that: institutional, professional, academic appointments and positions, and a number of other new definitions. So I think this is a really great place for folks to go to find this home. The National Science and Technology Council Research Security Subcommittee has requested implementation plans from each agency on how they implement the common form, so there's a lot of activity in this space. Next slide, please. So this is just a picture, NSF 24-1 biographical sketch. It continues to be required for each individual. That's the senior key person, and it's used to assess how well the individual team or organization is qualified to conduct the proposed activities. That's what NSF was always using it for, so very similar to that. We put a reminder in there that you're required to include any foreign talent recruitment programs in this biographical sketch. This is not new, but we've included as a reminder. And we wanted to remind you again that you have to certify that you're not a party to malign foreign talent recruitment program. And per NSF's, what we had already started, you are required to use the 24-1 to submit both the biographical sketch and current and pending other support. Next slide. NSF took this extremely seriously. We are fully compliant with all of the data elements that are specified in both common forms. But what are some of the impacts to this? The page limitation, biosketch, 3 pages, forever, no limitation. That limitation has been removed from the biographical sketch. We also had a section called synergistic activities. No other agency has that, but it is something in talking to senior management that we wanted to continue to maintain. So what we have done and how we have implemented this is we've moved it as a part of the biographical sketch, so we're compliant with the common form, but now it is submitted as a document that's part of the senior key personnel section document in research.gov. What does it include? It includes a list of 5 distinct examples that demonstrate the broader impact of the individual's professional and scholarly activities that focus on the integration and transfer of knowledge, as well as its creation. 1 page, 5 distinct examples. Use that page. Those were deliberately talked about, folks, by senior leadership. We want to make sure there's parity between early career scientists and someone who could have put 85 examples. And so we wanted to include some equivalency there and make sure that's important. We had language on sub-elements of forms in 23-1, and prior to that, that language has been removed. 5 distinct examples in 1 page. That's the requirements you have to comply with. Next slide, please. I know I'm talking fast, but I got a lot of cover. I'm not a New Yorker. I'm from Dayton, Ohio, but I can talk as fast as a New Yorker. So here is the disclosure form implementation instructions. We put this on here, thank you, Jeremy, so that we show you just how much we have complied with these requirements. These are the 2, and they're not deviations. They were permitted in the forms themselves. It says enter the persistent identifier, PID, for the senior key person. NSF has replaced that with ORCID, and we hope to take advantage of the pre-population that ORCID provides to make it easier for you, yes, we're going to be working together more, to make sure as much pre-population happens in Science CV as possible. Product, a list of products that demonstrate the individual's ability to carry out the project. In the instructions, we say agencies can limit that. For a senior investigator, a listing of products could be very, very long. And so what we have done is, wow, we used what we currently do. Provide a list of, and again, this was permitted in the instructions to be able to limit this, a list of 5 products most closely related and up to 5 other significant products. This, again, also addresses the equivalency between early career and more senior researchers. So that's pretty much it in terms of the variance that we have in the common forms. Next slide, please, is just a picture of current and pending other support, and we are fully compliant with the exception of changing PID to ORCID to exactly what it says on the screen in that common form. Next slide, please. Well, I want to spend more than just a second on this because we are receiving a lot of questions and comments on this. The Biden administration issued Executive Order 14112 in December of 2023. And what that executive order did was reiterate the president's commitment to protecting and supporting tribal sovereignty and self-determination, as well as to honor the treaty obligations to those nations. So the EO further stated that we, the federal government, must respect tribal national sovereignty by better ensuring that they are able to make their own decisions about where and how to meet the needs of their communities. No less than any other sovereign, tribal self-governance is about the fundamental, I get goosebumps, the fundamental right of a people to determine their own destiny and to prosper and flourish on their own terms. As a result of that, NSF had to figure out its implementation. We spent the last year. We have a tribal council engagement and consultation working group, and we've reached out to the tribes. 574 is who we're dealing with, federally recognized Indian tribes. We realize there are more, but we started with them. And what we heard from the tribal leadership, they don't know who NSF is. No, I'm serious. Is it the National Sanitary Foundation? You know, when you go into the airport, you always put your hand, it says NSF on there. I'm not joking. So we knew we had a lot of work ahead of us. For purposes of this policy, it is limited to resources or interests of a tribal nation, and those are connected with tribal lands. It does not apply to oceans. We've said this many times, but people see tribal lands and they're still thinking of that. So we're really thinking about resources, for example, natural resources, but it could be other things on those tribal lands. It also applied to the interests. So think of it as something that is unique to the tribe or something that's in the tribe's domain. And so what we heard over and over again from the tribes that nothing about us without us. They want that co-engagement, and this is an implementation. So for example, if a researcher seeks to draw conclusions about a cultural practice of a particular tribe, that would be a tribal interest because the tribe may care very much about how that tribe is represented in any publication or in any other form of communication. So that would require approval. So for proposal preparation purposes, this is how it's going to work. There is a new box on the cover sheet. You're going to check that, potential impacts on tribal nations. Just like human subjects and vertebrate animals, you have to provide, it's just in time, you have to provide one document, something that shows you've reached out to the tribe. However, NSF will not make an award until we have something from the tribe saying this doesn't impact our interests or resources or that we approve it. We know there will be bumps in the road on this. We know that there are going to be questions because we're getting a lot of them. But this is the right thing to do, and it is something that NSF at the highest levels take very seriously. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk about NSF's, I don't think I need to cover this part. Can we just move on to the next one? Okay, so a new version of the uniform guidance came out not all that long ago. It's a huge number of changes, folks, and we have been busy going. They see me going to lunch, and I have little stickies and highlighters on the pages going through it. And we had to deliver by May 15th an implementation plan. And so this is how NSF will implement the uniform guidance. We will revise our grant general conditions to add institutions of higher education and research nonprofit organizations. And that GC1 will be applied to any new award or funding amendment per the OMB guidance made on or after October 1st, 2024. We will also revise the PAP guide to put headers on each chapter, thank you, Sam, that will indicate that we will be revising the PAP guide. We're off cycle, so we'll indicate that if something in here is against what the uniform guidance applies. NSF takes its role as a steward very seriously. And we have now, it's just about June, and we believe you should get the terms and conditions before they actually go into effect, so you could train, change policies, and do all of that. So what that means is if we can't do something well, we don't do it, and we can't do it well in 3 months. So we will be using GC1. Hopefully we can talk about this at our meeting this afternoon with the Fed, or at lunch with the feds, and talk more about this. We are not walking away from the research terms and conditions. We just don't believe we had sufficient time to do it well. And if we can't, we don't do it. So the last slide shows our NSF opportunities. We have a spring grants conference coming up, and it's June 3rd to 5th in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And it has both, and first one since COVID, an in-person and a virtual option. So if you have faculty, administrators that would like to join us in Philadelphia, you can do that. Jeremy is trying to make the virtual experience the best possible way he can. So it feels like, for those that can't be in person, you have the interaction ability. So he's working very hard for that. And then there's a next slide that just points out some additional resources. One thing I wanted to close with is that NSF has just engaged in an opportunity to streamline, simplify, harmonize our funding opportunities. So one of the last ones Jeremy reviews for me, one of the last ones I reviewed was 86 pages long. 86 pages long. So we want to find a way to fix that. And so I've been tasked with forming a group with inside NSF on how to best do that. And someone mentioned, hey, let's do an RFI. I said, I have a better idea. Let's use the Federal Demonstration Partnership. So
Thank you.
You tell us, faculty, you use these things, research administrators, you use these things, and you're going to tell us when we're screwing up. So I look forward to hearing that, because we can learn a lot from that kind of engagement. So thank you all very much for your time and attention. I will be here through the entire day, and I look forward to talking to you in person and saying hello. So thanks, everybody.
Wait. Jean. There is one question, Jean. We're not letting you go that fast.
Oh, darn.
Francine Taylor asks, will the common forms have a required, not optional, field for ORCID? Having it as required would help the campus
It's optional.
adoption. It's optional
It's
still.
optional for now. Obviously, as our ability to pre-populate with ORCID grows, we would like to make that really a requirement, but right now we felt we could not do that. So stay tuned, but right now it is an optional field on the form. Both forms, actually. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Thank you. And again, I'll remind everyone that you can use the CVent app to ask questions, and we'll be happy to.
Or get up and talk.
Yeah, or you can use the mics. Thank you again, Jean.
Okay, our next speaker is from NIH, Cosima Garst.
Yay, Cosima.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Everybody, please bear with me. I'm getting over a little flu, so my voice is a little strained, but I've got my tea here, and Michelle can back me up as needed. Next slide, please. So, good morning, everybody. My name is Cosima Garst. I am the director of the Division of Grant Systems Integration within Opera, and we're going to start off with some policy updates as well as some systems process updates this morning. To start off, on March 23rd, President Biden signed the Further Consolidated Appropriations Act into law. With those appropriations into effect, NIH has since issued several important guide notices to share the legislative mandates, the NIH fiscal policies, and the NRSA budgetary levels. Those are linked on the slide as standard for each of our fiscal years. The OPM's updated salary levels for executive pay scale, which are in effect beginning January 1st of 2024, are set that limitation at $221,900. Excuse me. For active awards that have been issued in fiscal year 24 to date and restricted to the previous executive level 2, if adequate funds are available, recipients may rebudget those funds to accommodate the new salary cap, provided the salary cap increase is consistent with the institutional base salary and institutional policies. We also issued a guide notice that updated the fiscal year 24 NRSA stipend levels. This was increased by approximately 4% for pre-doctoral trainees and approximately 8% for postdoctoral trainees. This does apply to the fiscal year 24 NRSA awards, or those that are made on or after October 1st of 2023. Retroactive adjustments or supplementation of stipends or other budgetary categories for these awards made prior to October 1st or fiscal year 24 are not permitted, but all of the previously issued fiscal year 24 awards will be revised to adjust to the new fiscal year 24 funding level. Next slide, please. We're going to go into some policy update now. Next slide. So we did release the fiscal year 24 NIH grants policy statement in April of this year. This does apply to all NIH grants and cooperative agreement awards with budget periods beginning on or after October 1st of 2023. The current version is available in both HTML and PDF formats, as well as our standard table with the changes within the grants policy statement version. You'll find that this includes a lot of clarifications, including the full incorporation of our final 2023 data management and sharing policy, as well as other major policy updates that we provided to FDP and our applicant and recipient communities over the past year, including the final guidance on the written subaward agreements and updates of that nature. A friendly reminder that the guidance is available and that the table has also been made available on our website. As Jean had mentioned, in April, the OMB published the revisions to the 2 CFR Part 200, and that will be in effect for the final guidance for October 1st of 2024. These changes will be incorporated into our fiscal year 2025 grants policy statement within the first quarter of fiscal year 25. So we will be publishing that this year, and we will add in the additional implementation of the uniform guidance. And as standard practice, the policy changes and/or clarifications will be issued via guide notice as well as a Federal Register notice. Next slide, please. Excuse me. So just reminding everybody that we did issue a guide notice regarding the implementation of the SBIR and STTR foreign disclosure pre- and post-award requirements. This ultimately is the implementation of the NIH due diligence program to assess the security risks and denial of awards when foreign relationships or commitments with countries of concern pose a significant risk as provided within the SBIR or STTR Extension Act. The main reason that we wanted to highlight this requirement for you again was because even though this is specific to SBIR and STTR awards, the disclosure of all funded and unfunded relationships for the small business concerns also applies to other covered individuals, which are all senior key persons identified within the application. So that includes the research partners as well. The main difference here is that unlike other support and the biographical sketch, there is a single foreign disclosure form that is provided for the application. And that disclosure form is going to need to be provided at the application level, but provided for all of the covered individuals. So please make sure that if you're research partners with a small business concern applicant, that you're providing that information to them so that they can properly make the disclosures as part of the application. Next slide, please. We did want to highlight a few changes that are coming up. As you should hopefully be aware, in October, NIH introduced a new framework for the peer review process of most of our research project grant applications. This change was really reflecting the input that NIH has heard from multiple sources over the years, echoing concerns over the lengthy and often unclear review criteria and the possible effects of reputational bias on the peer review process. Notably, this effort reorganized the 5 regulatory criteria into 3 factors to better focus the peer reviewers on the key questions needed to assess the scientific and technical merit of the proposed research points. And additional updates were provided through a recent notice that we issued in early April. And we'll speak to more of that within the systems process update sections. But the key thing that we wanted to highlight is that this applies to most, but not all, research project grants. For example, this simplified framework is not going to apply to the small business activity codes or our complex or multi-project grant activity codes within this initiative. Next slide, please. We also recently announced a separate but aligned effort around updates to our NIH fellowship application and review process. The notice linked on the slide implements some changes to the fellowship application form, as well as an attempt to streamline and simplify the review process as well. It reorganizes the 5 current scored review criteria and redefines them into 3 scored criteria instead. And there are also updates to the PHS Fellowship Supplemental Form to align with the restructured criteria. This is, in effect, helping to consolidate some of the attachments so that they are better representative of the content within, ultimately removing 2 of the attachment fields within the top portion to reduce some of the administrative burden there, while also updating some of the labeling on the form to reflect, to better clarify the distinguishing between the candidate and the sponsor applicant organization. These changes are effective for application submissions with due dates on or after January 25th, 2025. And of course, it's applicable to all programs using the fellowship activity codes. And I will get into more information about the other changes coming in January of 25 in the systems process update section. One other thing to highlight, of course, is that as NIH tries to offer many outreach opportunities to further engage with our applicant community, there will also be an OER webinar this coming September that will walk through some of these changes in a little bit more detail to provide some information for fellowship applicants. Next slide, please. In February of this year, NIH issued guidance that superseded previous guidance about marking changes within resubmission applications. Effective May 25th of 2024, the use of markup should not be used to identify changes in resubmission applications. As a reminder, the purpose of the introduction statement within a resubmission application is really where those changes should be highlighted in terms of explaining how the changes in response to the original application have been addressed in the resubmission application. And the purpose of this clarification was really to ultimately help the applicants as the use of markups such as highlighting, bolding, underlining, and other similar graphical and typographical changes can really be distracting for peer reviewers, as well as can make it more difficult for the application to be reviewed as is, rather than by focusing on the different sort of formatting and design choices, if you will. Next slide, please. And actually just published yesterday, we had a guide notice that was published, NOT OD 24116, which formally announced the increase to childcare subsidies for NRSA fellowships and training grants. Is a continued commitment, is part of our continued commitment to sustaining the vitality of the future of the biomedical research workforce, and to support for the challenges faced by many of our scholars and pre- and postdoctoral trainees. NIH is increasing our childcare cost support by $500 to up to $3,000 per year, starting with fiscal year 24 awards. The guide notice does outline that the process for requesting or receiving those funds for fellowships and training grants remains unchanged. And it's important to note that any awards that have been issued for fiscal year 24 to date will be revised to reflect the increased amount. No further action is needed on the recipient organizations to receive that adjustment. Next slide, please. So going into some of our system process updates, an area that I am a little bit more familiar with. We are going to go into, as I mentioned earlier, the Simplified Review Framework updates. That second guide notice that came out in April further clarified the applicable activity codes. We added in the clarification that the phased activity codes, versions of the activity codes that were announced initially will also be part of SRF. So this includes the R21, R33, the UH2, UH3, and so forth. And we also removed the DP activity codes that were more individually focused in terms of the opportunity. This was in order to have the focused review criteria as part of this initiative be a little bit more aligned across the activity codes that were applicable. One thing to note that while there are no form changes associated with the SRS initiative, such as there are no element changes to the research plan form, for example, because of the effective date being application due dates on or after January 25th of 2025, all of these applications will be subject to Forms I application forms packages. And if you're asking what is Forms I, I'm going to get to that on the next slide. But mostly I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that during this process and this transition to this new simplified review framework, as with the changes for the fellowship applications, you may start to see new and reissued NOFOs coming out that will have this new criteria, but that may also be posted initially without application forms packages. That is because the Forms I packages are not yet available. However, particularly for the SRF NOFOs, because there are no changes to the forms, you can begin to prepare those applications with their current application instructions and our Forms H forms. And then, of course, you'll be able to update and get prepared for those application forms packages when they become available later in October. Next slide, please. So Forms I. As we all know, the alphabet train just kind of keeps on moving. And we did just have our transition to Forms H. However, we wanted to leverage this opportunity not only with the simplifying review framework, but also with the changes coming for our fellowship applications to update the forms as well as part of our adoption of the common forms. So Forms I, in terms of our competing application forms packages, will be effective for applications submitted for due dates on or after January 25th of 2025. This will incorporate updates related to multiple initiatives, namely the review-related efforts that I mentioned earlier, as well as some additional updates to training grant applications. The formal guide notice for that will be coming out very soon, related to some updates to the training program plan form, as well as the training data tables, and also the adoption of the common forms for biographical sketch and current and pending other support. More information on that in just a moment. The Forms I application guide and forms packages will be available this fall. We typically anticipate having that published by October 25th. And then we will have additional information and communications as we get closer to that time frame in October. The main thing that we want to make sure is that everybody knows is that we're heavily committed to providing as much detail as early and as much as possible to our applicant community. We've already had multiple webinars related to the SRF initiative, and we have some that are upcoming for the training, and then the fellowship one, as I mentioned as well. So stay tuned, and I'll also have some updates about how you can stay in the know. Next slide, please. Regarding the common forms, NIH has submitted our planned implementation plan to OSTP, and our current implementation plan is that effective for all applications and RPPRs submitted on or after May 25th, 2025, our applicants and recipients must use the common forms for both the biographical sketch and current and pending other support. Our primary objective for the effective date of May 25th, 2025 is that we will also be rolling out the electronic formats of these templates within Science CV and requiring the use of Science CV for completing and certifying those common forms. NSF will Science CV will generate the digitally certified PDF for use of the application submission. So similar to NSF, there were a few items that are not currently on the common form that NIH does still intend to collect that are specific to our peer review regulations. We will be collecting those through a separate format or supplement form, specifically the personal statement, the contributions to science and honors. Otherwise, we will be adopting the common forms without any change to the fields and elements. Similar to NSF, we were very committed to making sure that we adopted the common forms in whole cloth, and but we did want to make sure that we had the ability to still collect the supplemental information that was necessary to adhere to our peer review regulations. More information will be coming out about that very soon, and I also don't want to steal Michelle's thunder as she heads into some of her other talks later today. But I will just remind everybody that, of course, until we fully adopt those common forms, NIH does require applicants and recipients to continue to use the current BioSketch and other support formats, and that failure to use these formats may cause NIH to withdraw applications from or delay considerations for funding. And then my last systems update on the next slide here is just announcing to everybody that effective Monday, June 3rd, the ERA Commons will be retiring the ERA Commons Quick Queries page. This was a location where folks were able to access some information about organizations, data that was a bit redundant from information that was available within the Commons for account holders, as well as on public sites such as Reporter. We are ultimately retiring this particular Quick Queries page to help reduce the redundancies within ERA systems, while also providing some additional security for the organization data by requiring the access that should be restricted to within the Commons for users with those affiliated Commons accounts to remain there. Although, of course, any of the publicly available information is still accessible through Reporter. So we do encourage organizations to take full advantage of those other existing ERA tools, both within ERA status and the RPPR modules, as well as Reporter to obtain that publicly available information related to organizations and other grant-related topics with regards to NIH funding. So I'm going to transition to just a couple of last compliance updates. The first being that, just a reminder, NIH is currently conducting a retroactive review of single audits. And in order to avoid further delays in issuance of awards during this transition period, some recipients may have received a term on their notice of award that indicated that we are conducting these retrospective reviews. We did want to confirm that the presence of this term does not indicate that NIH is moving towards any sort of enforcement action, and we wanted to assure everyone that if there are any issues that are identified during these reviews, NIH will contact the recipient to discuss the resolution and next steps. So do not be alarmed if you have received this term on any of your awards. Next slide, please. And then last compliance update is regarding unilateral closeout reporting. In January, we issued a notice that reiterated, that alerted the community of strengthened enforcement of longstanding closeout requirements. NIH, in order to align with regulations, we will retroactively report all unilateral closeout actions taken since January of 2023 as a responsibility qualification record in SAM.gov, which will remain for 5 years. As a reminder, that failing to submit all required documents within 120 days of the end of the project period without express approval for a delay will result in unilateral closeout. And we did also want to specifically call out the fact that recipients have the ability to respond via the Contractor Performance Assessment Reporting System, or CPARS, to these SAM.gov records to document any of their ensuing actions. So for example, if you've submitted the outstanding report since that action was filed, you're able to respond to that publicly. So to close it out, I did just want to highlight a few of the listservs on the next slide that NIH has. particularly wanting to call out, given all of these updates and changes that are coming, the NIH Virtual Grants Conference and Events, and specifically on the next slide, a call out to the OER virtual webinars. Sign up for these events. They are going to be coming especially a lot related to these changes that are forthcoming in 2025. The ones that we have already had are the recordings and the slides and the information are available for you on those pages. And you can already register for some of the ones that are upcoming, such as the fellowship webinar that's coming in September. And with that, I'll take any questions if we do have time.
There are a couple in the chat, so I'm going to start with the question that kind of follows up on the audits comment. Please comment on the status of NIH review of subrecipient audits as noted in some notices of award. Does NIH have any specific concerns? Oh gosh, my screen just went. Does NIH have any specific concerns with these subrecipients, or were they chosen randomly? When will NIH take more definitive enforcement actions?
So they were not chosen randomly. This was a review, a retrospective review as a result of an audit finding against NIH. And by default, if the sub is, if there's a prime that's undergoing a retrospective review, the sub awards are being cleared by default if they're the sub. However, that does not mean that the sub will not be reviewed as a prime if they have a prime, if they're a prime to an NIH award. So I just want to make sure that folks recognize that this is really something that we should have been doing under the Single Audit Act, looking at the audits and making certain that those audits were cleared. And we were not doing all that we should have been doing because we didn't have the resources from various areas to do that, not so much on NIH. I just want to keep it very politically savvy. But I do say that as a result of this, we are going back to make sure that we have not missed anything because we want to be sure that when the auditors come back, we're cleared. And we do have a way of managing this going forward. Right now, it's probably a little bit more manual, but we do have a tool that we're using, and once we get that going, we will make sure that these get cleared fast. I do also want to say that these were informational terms, but the language in the term, I could see how our recipient community could have been alarmed by that, because it did talk about enforcement, and it talked about if we find that you're going to get it, and we didn't mean it that way. So we should have really paid closer attention to the language that we used. Going forward, we'll be issuing memos. We won't be putting informational terms because we know what that looks like in terms of having terms and conditions, even if it's informational, talking about you're out of compliance or might be out of compliance, that could cause you an audit, and that's not the goal here. So work with us. We're going to get these rescinded through a guide notice, likely for those that are finally cleared. We're going institution by institution. And we have a few more to work through. And if you have questions, of course, feel free to reach out. And we do apologize sincerely for any inconvenience this has caused, but we'll make it right.
Thank you. One last question. Please confirm that the adoption of the common forms that you will not be requiring current and pending support at the application stage.
Correct. So the current and pending other support will still be required at just in time, and then at the RPPR as appropriate, along with other our standard disclosure requirements. So the policies around when it is required is unchanged.
Yeah, we're not the NSF.
And just to call your attention, Shauna Cox had asked, does the child care subsidy for NRSA fellowships also include T32 training grants? And that was already answered in the chat. Yes, both NRSA fellow and training will receive the subsidy.
Yep.
I think that closes out our questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kasima. Okay, up next we have Calvin Scott, Air Force. Welcome, welcome, Calvin.
Good morning, good morning. Oh, man, there's a lot of people in here. I was sitting up front because I didn't want to look back. This is going to be quick, so it's not going to be as exciting as Ms. Feldman or the lady who just came before me, because we don't have as many updates, because we are kind of like some of the other agencies up here. We're trying to work through some of our things so that we don't put a lot of burden on you guys, because since I came in this position from contracting, originally I had the stance of this is what the grant says or this is what the contract says, you need to meet the terms. Well, I've been beaten out of that now, so. But I just want to let you, we can go ahead. My name is Calvin Scott. I'm the Senior Procurement Analyst and Small Business Specialist for the Air4SR. And I represent the Air Force and Space Force as far as the basic research grants. All right, so we can go to the next slide. All right, this is the agenda. We'll kind of go through this stuff. All right, and next slide. All right, and this is just the AFRL framework, and this is just the many different TDs that we have throughout the world, because some of these TDs are stateside, and some of them we also have international offices in Japan, Australia, and we're working on some in, I believe, South Asia, but we can go to the next slide, please. All right, and this is our mission. The big thing is Air4SR wants to discover, shape, champion, and transition high-risk research to the benefit of the Air Force and Space Force. And I'm not going to regurgitate everything on the slide because it's a lot, but I'll go to the next slide. All right, this is the good stuff. This is how we work. Okay, we find the research via posting our solicitations on grants.gov primarily. We haven't got to the NIH or NSF level of having our own submission portal yet, but we see you. So we find we need to update this slide, or we're going to have to update this slide, because we went on a hiring surge, and we have over 40 program officers now. And the IP, the international program officers, is also growing as our funding and the research landscapes change. And then we want to, forming is it speaks itself. We want to shape the research or we don't want to shape the research. We want the research to kind of guide us in a direction. And then we fund over 1,600 extramural research grants, whether it's via MIPers, through partnerships with NASA, NSF, NIH, I'm finding out. So those are the many opportunities we have. And then the most important part to the Air Force is the transition to the AFRL TDs. And those are our technical directorates. And that's where the research goes into application for the military. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, and this is kind of our granting process. It doesn't cover what you guys consider as the headache part, where it's the pre-proposal submission part, right? Because that is terrible. At times, the communication gaps, I'm hearing all of you guys' complaints because I see all the emails. So we are working on our program officers responding. We're working on a PI portal in the background. Again, that stuff it's coming. It just takes time. As you know, we have a lot of government approvals we have to go through to get everything situated. All right, so we can go to the next slide. And these are our portfolios. The portfolios, again, they are ever changing as the needs of the Air Force and Space Force change. All right, go to the next slide, please. All right, and this is kind of how we accomplish our mission. And again, it talks more about of course, we've already heard about the citizen stirs and the changes that are coming with those, but we also have the MIRI program, which is a multidisciplinary research, university research initiative, where we partner with ONR, DARPA, the Navy, on different requirements. And again, we have the NDSCG fellowship, which is major because that fellowship program funds the next generation scientists, because that fellowship is geared at increasing the number of U.S.-born scientists. That's a great fellowship program. I encourage you guys to visit. Or when we get to the About AFRL page, you'll see where we have all of our solicitations. And I encourage you guys to go out and, especially for your faculty, your students and stuff like that, figure out where that support is, where those dollars are, and then, initiate those conversations with white papers, emails. It's going to take some time. The program officers have, millions of people reaching out to them and requesting immediate responses, and we know they're not great on the immediate response part, but we're working on it. All right, next slide. All right, most important slide to me is, how do you work with the Air Force? How does it start? Well, initially, you're gonna go to grants.gov, you'll find your requirement, figure out which research portfolio you're in, and then each research portfolio has a generic email box that that is assigned to a program manager. So the program manager, those emails don't just go off into space. They are actually going to the program manager, and they're reviewing those boxes. Now, there are times where, we have spring review, just like you guys have your academic calendar. We kind of have a rough work calendar or our battle rhythm, and at times we will, be slower in our communication. But the initial step is to, you want to kick off discussions with a white paper. White papers are extremely important, and we don't need a proposal white paper. We just need a short 3 to, I would say, 5-page white paper explaining, the introduction of your research to the program officer, and to initiate that discussion. It may be hey, this white paper comes off and this is good, and then, hey, we'd like to see a proposal, or it could be, this is really not what the Air Force is interested in, but we do have Navy counterparts or Army counterparts that we should be passing that research on. And we are encouraging our program officers to do that on the basic research level, applied research level, as well as, advanced research. Let's go to the next slide. All right, and again, I kind of already talked through this slide. In-person conversations rarely happens. We're working on that. I am working with the FDP engagement team, and we are working to establish a more stable communication path so that we can also communicate the changes ahead of time so that so there's not as much of a burden on the universities, because it's hard for me to figure out what they want us to do. So I know it's got to be hard for you, because some of the regulations, it's confusing, and then we say, hey, we want you guys to come up with this new risk to address our risk process, and you're like, well, risk process, what is that? So we have to be better about our projecting and communicating to you guys. All right, and then over the phone, I can't get the POs over the phone, so good luck. Via email, email is going to be the best option, because again, the program officers, they have, we have international universities as well as domestic universities that we have to respond to. So it's a lot of people, as well as congressional taskers and stuff like that, where we have to go back and farm, fish for this information from 5 years ago. So it's a lot going on behind the scenes, but we are looking at better ways to track the communication with the universities on a PI level, as well as the business offices. We're looking at better ways to engage you guys and to understand your problems, because sometimes we see a circle, you see a square. And it's just trying to figure out how we bridge that gap. All right, let's go to the next slide. And determining how to work with us, please review the funding opportunity announcements or broad agency announcements in great detail, because sometimes if we have something that's specifically set for HBCU and we have a tier 1 school or a school that's not necessarily a HBCU or MSI, or is it MSTSI? We keep changing the names. Yeah. MSI. So if it's a MSI, then you wouldn't be eligible. So we do get those frustrating things, but if you review our solicitations and the eligibility criteria, it'll just provide you more insight and kind of save like that whole proposal process, because it is a lot. I get it. All right, and okay, in this slide, it has like our AFRL opportunities, but I'd like to go to the next slide because it kind of has more information, if I remember it correctly. Yeah. And if you follow us on, I encourage you guys to follow us. We have improved our social media presence, and that has allowed us to communicate with like potential, like when we have like our young investor professional or our YIP program. Prior to posting that FOA, now we're hosting live online interactive Twitter question and answer sessions, so that we have the program coordinator and our communications team, but based on the reactions that we've been getting from some of our questions, we've actually had some of our program officers where they're actually calling in so that we can provide live, timely responses within minutes of you posting the tweet. And this, again, is just more ways to find out what the Air Force is doing as far as basic research. Let's go to the next slide. All right, I told you I was going to be quick, but I'm pretty sure I have at least one question.
There is one question. And for those who asked questions that we didn't get to in the last session, I believe different NIH folks that are here are responding to those in their comments, so you can track that as well. So here's your question, Calvin. Can Air Force comment about risk matrix analysis approach used by the agency related to foreign influence?
Not yet. So we are like, there will be an engagement, there will be a webinar once we have complete and totally ironed out our risk process. That is as far as I can go right now, but we are working on it.
Thank you so much. Right. Let's give Calvin a warm welcome.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Ajmal Aziz, Homeland Security.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm definitely a newbie here because this is my first FDP.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Though I understand that the Department of Homeland Security has had a long-standing relationship with this group here. Brief introduction. I'm a program manager at the Science and Technology Directorate. We are the research and development arm for the department. With respect to our mission, we utilize a lot of research grants to kind of help support some of the various research kind of needs that the department has. So think about requirements that we've identified from kind of the boots on the ground, such as like FEMA, Transportation Security Agency, all the way to our policy shop as well. So it's important for us to kind of utilize some of these mechanisms to kind of get some of these solicitation requirements out there so that we can start partnering primarily with universities, academia, NGOs to kind of help us address some of these research gaps that we're ultimately facing. I oversee our public safety and violence prevention portfolio, which focuses on conducting social science research, really to kind of help us better understand, why things work certain ways, with a particular focus on targeted violence and terrorism prevention, human trafficking, and soft target security. Because of the nature of our work, there's a need to kind of utilize some of these financial assistance grant awards, not just to kind of help provide some of these the evidence and data back to the department, but also to provide some of these tools and capabilities back to the local level. How can we help inform a public good based off of some of the work that we're undertaking right now? So with that, we utilize these research grants to support basic and applied research. And it's a process for us here at DHS. We're still trying to refine how we go about streamlining some of these processes. I think sometimes you have to take one step back before you take two steps forward. So within this fiscal year, we definitely had a learning curve in terms of implementing some new processes in place to kind of help support some of these research grants. So at the beginning of this fiscal year, we issued about $11 million worth of grants here that ultimately went to about 10 different institutions. All of those institutions were primarily academia, university, and kind of research foundations. Eligibility criteria, definitely varied. We kind of keep it open to state and local kind of partners. We also kind of keep it open to international partners, especially if it's a partner that the department has a bilateral kind of engagement partnership with. I kind of mentioned earlier about some new processes that we were implementing to kind of refine how we execute some of these research grants. We kind of saw that come into play this year with the inclusion of some new terms and conditions into our notices of funding opportunity. We added about 27 new terms and conditions. So while I appreciate all the conversations here about streamlining the processes, we're going the different direction right now. We're asking, I think I heard somebody say earlier about 7,500 pages worth of proposals. Yeah, the proposals we received were well north of about 200 pages. So, appreciate everything that the FDP is trying to do here, because I think there's a lot of lessons learned that we can definitely incorporate into the future use of DHS research grants in this space.
The goal is to brainwash.
All about it. So, with those updated terms and conditions, one of the things that definitely stood out this go-around was the inclusion of a privacy certificate. Since we conduct a lot of social science research, it's important for us to ensure, that when applications are submitted to us, that, we leave no stones unturned in terms of better understanding what some of the data collection methods and approaches are. Obviously within the Department of Homeland Security, we pay extra attention to, privacy protections, human subjects protections, because a lot of that is, some of the methods that we ultimately use to kind of help support some of these research questions that we have. Our proposals usually, incorporate interviews, focus groups, site visits. We try to kind of do open, publicly available environmental scans to also include social media. So with that comes a level of protection that, as a private citizen, you would want to see in terms of how, the government is ultimately able to, work with, people like yourselves to kind of help, support some of these efforts. So, we issued about $11 million worth of grants last year. We have, plans to, utilize some of these notices of funding opportunities as we enter FY25. With the passing of a full budget here, ultimately DHS and specifically the Science and Technology Directorate, we're facing some budget cuts at this given moment, but that shouldn't impact our ability to get some of this work out the door as we enter into FY25. What I can share for everybody here is we should have about maybe $4 million worth of grants that's going to be focused on targeted violence and terrorism prevention, helping us better understand what the causes and correlates are in this space, so that we can just better equip our policy, operational components, and even kind of local prevention programmers and just local programs, so that they have the evidence and data that they need to ultimately kind of fulfill their goals. One of the things I will say about our notices of funding opportunities, while there are a lot of documents that are provided upfront with this application process, we definitely pay a particular eye on letters of support from local entities. How are we able to take some of this research and implement it? Because that's extremely important for us. While the research is great and everything like that, it's how can we take that research and translate it into kind of practice. So kind of seeing how that bridge is kind of gapped in terms of research, policy, practice really stands out in terms of the evaluations that are undertaken within DHS once we start reviewing some of these applications. I mentioned the $11 million worth of grants that we issued out earlier this year. We ultimately received about 60 applications. 60 applications, 10 awards, so you're looking at roughly about $1 million each. So really appreciate the opportunity here to kind of talk to the FDP. Thought I got cut off for a second. It's like the Emmys. Really appreciate the opportunity here to talk to the FDP. While we are still kind of new in terms of refining some of our processes, I think there's a lot of university folks here, so hopefully we'll be able to kind of see some of your institutions supporting and providing applications to support some of these future requirements that we have.
That's right.
Happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much. I don't see any in the chat. But I will make a little program announcement, right? We're running a tad late, so just to let you know, when we conclude this session, we'll take a short break, and we would look to start our OMB panel around 10:20. So with that, we can go on to the next piece.
All right, thank you. So next we have Mary Sladek and Christiane Diallo, NASA. Welcome, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Christiane Diallo, and I am a Senior Program Analyst with the NASA Office of Procurement and Grants Policy Division. And today I'll be going over a few grants policy updates and some upcoming events and funding opportunities. Next slide, please. Listed on this slide is your primary points of contact for all grants policy and program-related questions. Next slide. The first update that we have is changes to the structures of the NASA Grants and Cooperative Agreement Manual, also known as the GCAM. We are currently reviewing the GCAM with significant revisions to streamline and improve the process for our applicants and recipients so that it is a more comprehensive resource for navigating the different phases of the grants life cycle. Some of the key revisions include consolidation of the proposer's guide, and if you're not familiar with that document, it outlines the process for applying to NASA grants and cooperative agreements. We will be integrating all the content from the proposer's guide into the GCAM, and following these updates, the proposer's guide will become obsolete. The next update is the removal of all policies that is internal to NASA staff, so that the policies in the GCAM are strictly focused on our grant applicants and recipients. We will also be updating all of our policies so that we're compliant with the latest revision of the 2 CFR 200. And finally, we're going to have a standalone terms and condition template so that it is more easy access to our users. The next update that we have is the GCAM, once we complete the update, is going to be available on the grants policy and compliance webpage. So we are encouraged all of you to get familiar with the new structure of the GCAM as well as the revised policies. And we anticipate that all of the updates will be available by October 1st. Our next update is about new training and information sessions that are available on our YouTube channel. And if you're not familiar with the Grants and Policy and Compliance YouTube channel, the link is available here on the slide for your reference. The latest updates that we have on our channel are recordings of NASA's Science Mission Directorate's implementation of the dual anonymous peer review, which Mary will touch on later. We also have grants closeout training, and that training provides users with NASA's process for closing out grants, as it is prescribed in the 2 CFR 200 and the GCAM. We also recently facilitated, or the payment management system staff facilitated a training with NASA grantees on how to use PMS and the proper submission of the financial reports. And this was due to a recent change of NASA's policy requirement for submitting financial reports into PMS. And also, if you recall, at the January FDP, we did announce that we were modifying our financial reporting requirements from quarterly to semi-annual, with the first report due out April 30th. And since then, we have received several questions or comments from our applicants, or grantees rather, that they were unable to submit their reports due to some system errors within PMS. And as a result of that, we have modified the submission date to May 22nd, that was yesterday, to allow recipients with the full 30 days to submit their report. And again, if you need additional information on how that submission process works, we encourage you to refer to the PMS website. Next slide. Next slide. Actually, okay. Also, at the January FDP, we did share that the biosketch and disclosure forms were awaiting OSTP's approval. And since that approval, we had to submit an implementation plan to OSTP on how we're going to adopt the forms. And that plan was submitted to OSTP on May 10th with an anticipated effective date of October 1. So once the plan is approved by OSTP, we're going to publish a biosketch and current pending support policy in the Federal Register for public comments. And we will also be developing a NASA-specific version of the forms and begin requiring all of our applicants to use that October 1. We'll be sure to keep you all updated throughout the process. And that's all the policy update that I have, and I'll turn it over to Mary for SMD updates.
Okay, next chart, please. So earlier, Jean was saying how old she was in FDP years, and I'm not that old. I was thinking Antonise and I joined together, right? So we're less than 10 easily. Maybe we might not even be 8 yet. In Fed years, however, I am 35. So 18, the first 18 was with at NSF. So I'm with the Science Mission Directorate. On this chart, I just give you a little statement about our mission. I'm here representing programs and also some entities that are related to SMD, but that are not actually part of the Science Mission Directorate. Next chart, please. So the bad news first. Some of you may remember that our NASA Shared Services Center has been incredibly accommodating relating to granting no-cost extensions. Unfortunately, those times have changed. There was an audit, several audits, an OIG, and they seem to be interpreting the interpreting the should be submitted 10 days prior to the end of the performance period as a must, and if you don't meet it, then you will not be granted your no-cost extension. This chart is just telling you that, and I'm encouraging you to encourage your faculty. I don't know who actually submits the no-cost extensions at your institutions. Sometimes we find PIs do it, don't tell the sponsored research office. And so we're trying to find better ways to do this to make sure that everybody gets it in on time and does not get penalized. So please, please, please spread the word. The good news is the NASA Shared Services Center used to say, they used to provide a window that was kind of short. They would say, oh, within the last 30 days, but you can now submit it in your final year. If you don't have to wait until day 10 or day 11. You can submit it in the last year and ask for your no-cost extension. Next chart, please. So you heard a little teaser about dual anonymous peer review, or DAPR, and this chart talks about how we in SMD are trying to be innovative and equitable and fair in the review of our proposals, which means, of course, the proposals get prepared differently, meaning that the reviewers, neither the reviewers nor the proposers know who each other are. The objective is to minimize the implicit and unconscious biases in the evaluation of the merit of proposals, and the Science Mission Directorate so far has only applied this process to panels, but we are seeking to expand DAPR to non-panel review, and such an experiment will be coming this winter, involving our largest graduate student funding opportunity called the Future Investigators in NASA, Earth, and Space Science and Technology, FINEST. There is a preliminary draft of FINEST that includes this DAPR change, and we encourage you to look at it, let your faculty look at it, and we take comments, so please do not hesitate to give us comments. There are additional resources and videos in addition to the one that Christiane mentioned on their YouTube channel. And you can always submit general questions regarding Dapper directly to our Dapper czar, Doug Hudgens. His email's on this chart, and also to our senior advisors for research and analysis, of which I am one, or Sarah. Next chart, please. So I always try to wear roses on the first day. I will be here all day. Roses is our research opportunities in space and earth science, and I'll probably be back tomorrow if you don't catch me today and you think of something. This program's been around a long time, and we recently issued in February the Roses Notice of Funding Opportunity, which is also a NASA research announcement, which means that not only universities, but other federal agencies and businesses can apply to Roses. Some of the programs, 13 of them, have no fixed due date, and we review proposals on a rolling basis. Most of the programs do have a due date. Each Roses opportunity is an appendix. So for example, there's something called Citizen Science Seed Funding, and we always abstract the NOFO on the grants.gov. You can easily find the names of opportunities by using the charts related to how things are issued in due date order or in appendix order. So like somebody, I think, who mentioned the alphabet? So the Roses alphabet, A is for earth science and not astrophysics. Don't ask me why, that's the way it started. Next chart, please. So there is a summary of solicitation that is super long, but the good news is most people don't have to read the whole summary of solicitation. Usually you start with the funding opportunity program announcement, and then you go back to the summary of solicitation if you can't figure out what the shorter program announcement's saying. This chart, the czar for Roses is still Max Bernstein. You can still reach him at the Sarah address. Some of our Roses programs, very few of them actually, have a required inclusion plan, and this chart provides you the link to the website that has ideas about writing, revising, and implementing such an inclusion plan. All proposals to our mission directorate must align to our science plan, and there was an update. It's dated, it's quite funny, it's actually dated like September, but I don't think we actually put it out until this year. Next chart, please. Now, we have a Research Initiation Awards overview webinar coming up in June. This chart provides that information. If you want to share it with your faculty or anyone, please do. Next chart, please. Now, this is really exciting. This is not a funding opportunity. This is a public science service being provided in the lobby of NASA headquarters. And it is free. And it is in collaboration with FEMA and NOAA and USGS and the other fine agencies that we list on this slide. It's open Monday through Friday. It doesn't take long to visit it, and it's a data enterprise. So if you're looking for something to do tomorrow afternoon, it's not a far ride to go. Next chart, please. This is my final chart, and then I'll turn it back to Christiane. The NASA Office of Technology, Policy, and Strategy, OTPS, they didn't want to get confused with OSTP, has this is about policy. This is not about a funding opportunity. They want people to answer a questionnaire about lunar non-interference. So that information is on this chart, and thank you so much for letting me address you again. I look forward to turning 9 with you.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I won't go through all of our funding opportunities. Just want to highlight a few. Next slide. The first one is with ARMD. The first event there is with the 2024 Gateways to Blue Skies competition. For this event, we don't have the date listed here, but it's on May 30th to 31st. There will be a live stream at the link that is provided here. The next one is the information session about ARMD University Student Research Challenge. This opportunity is student-led. It's $80,000 per year for 1 year. And there was also, I don't think they have the most up-to-date slide, but there was the info session held on May 6th. And if you are interested about what was discussed there, there's a live link there for you to refer to. And the third is the upcoming Tech Talks. The date for this is TBD, but there is a video recording on their website about previous Tech Talks as well. And you can visit the website to see what date is available for the upcoming one. Next slide, please. The next one is the Office of STEM Engagement. They have 2 opportunities coming up with the MURAP and the SPACE grant. The eligibility requirement and the proposal due dates are highlighted here for your reference. Next slide. The last opportunity is with our STMD. Again, the proposal's due date for this solicitation is included here for your reference. Next. I believe this is the last one. Okay, so here's a list of all of helpful links and resources, including our YouTube channel that I mentioned, and also the GPC web page with all of our point of contact should you have any questions following this meeting. And that's all I have for you today.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much. Very interesting.
So there are just a couple of questions.
Okay.
Will NASA require science CV for the biosketch and other support?
We are actually exploring that option right now and should have something, I believe, in October. Yeah.
So I'm Ms. Frank, I'm the Chief of Grant Policy and Compliance at NASA. We are exploring the option. We are not implementing this. Part of the reason why we pushed the due date for implementation a little further back, as NSF and I mentioned, their proposed for actual due dates for the implementation of the common forms is in May, if I'm saying that correctly. But we're looking at October because we are exploring the options outside of our current Inspire system.
Right, and so for those in the back, Antonise was saying, we're looking at it, they're working on it, and here's a nuance that you have to understand. The grants policy team literally has no budget, and so science CV costs money. And our mission directorate has agreed to contribute a significant portion to fund the agency's participation in science CV. But we're only, even though we're the largest funder, we're not the only funder, and there is not yet complete buy-in with some of the directorates and offices that Christiane mentioned. So it'll be a while before we get to science CV.
Thank you. We can relate to the budget issue, trust me, in this room. NASA NCE's 2 clarification questions. 1, does the change to 10 days or else mean that NSSC is effectively removing the grantee-approved NCE as an option? And?
Well, okay, let's do that one quickly. So you can still give yourself the 1-year no-cost extension, but you must meet the deadline. We've had reports of people submitting West Coast time, NSSC is Central time, and it's been considered late. So we tell people now, submit on the 11th day to make sure that you get your no-cost extension.
Yes. Or as I've heard it said by other agencies, which clock do you use? Hours. So we all know what that means. Don't be last minute. If the 10-day before the end date deadline is missed, and that will never happen, is there any option for an NCE?
It's possible, but it's really the grants officer's decision, and the grant officer will consult with the funding program, like SMD. But unfortunately, if it is submitted after the period of performance has ended, it's very unlikely it will be granted. And that's because of this audit of the Office of STEM Engagement. It's on the IG website. The IG just took the NSSC to task, I think unfairly, for being incredibly accommodating for no-cost extensions.
And last, I would like to share, I think, an important comment from Lori Schultz. NASA may wish to consider soliciting feedback from tribal nations on the lunar non-interference request for information.
I will pass that on to the point of contact. That's a great suggestion.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so last but certainly not least, Susan Rice from NIFA, and we have her joining us virtually.
Can't hear. Is she on mute?
Are you on mute?
Oh, there you go.
Oh, we can hear you now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm going to try to go through this pretty quickly since we are already at our time limit. So I'm Susan Rice. I'm the Policy and Oversight Division Director at NIFA, National Institute for Food and Agriculture, under the USDA umbrella. So next slide, please. Oh, I can't, okay. I can't see them, so just bear with me. So I just want to give an update on our great modernization
You're,
initiative.
you're breaking up a little bit, Susan. You're-
Everything's together. ERA components, and we are.
Susan, you're breaking up a lot. Your internet, I think your internet is going wonky a little bit. You're breaking up. Are you on? Let's try again. Turn her
Turn the
van-
camera off.
Turn your camera off. Okay. Yeah. Susan, turn your, yeah, there you go.
Is this better?
Yes.
Much.
Okay, so we should be on slide 3. And this, I just wanted to let you know, we are now in phase 2, reconciling some of our gaps that we see with ERA and what we currently use managing our grant life cycle. Beginning of FY 2025, we will be evaluating
No questions? All right. Well, we want to give a round of applause to our Thank you so much for those great updates. Our seconds conclude.
10-minute break.
10-minute break, thank you. Thanks to all.
It was nice.
Pleasure meeting you as well.
Coming to the federal.
It was amazing. The timing was not bad. Like,
Unfortunately, I
she
have an
stopped
all-hands
right
I need
in.
to go to,
Oh,
but I look forward to participating in future FDPs.
yes. Well, I'm gonna get your